Hello, friends. This is Pastor Caleb McGregor. When you clicked on this video, you were probably expecting the full service from September 8th, our kickoff Sunday. Well, we had some audio problems with the upload in the YouTube. And so in place of the full service, I am re-recording my sermon for you today. At age 35, I'm beginning to notice how much I'm turning into my parents. This could be a good thing, but it could also be a scary thing. Sometimes you try really hard not to perpetuate the same habits that they had. For instance, my parents came from a part of the world where they put R's in all their words. The wash rag, George Washington, the washing machine, a banana, an ironing board, and the most annoying of all the words, the toilet. They also stuff all their mail in a drawer in the kitchen. And when that gets filled up, they start sorting the mail by placing them in the cabinets on top of the plates and glasses. So every day featured a frantic search through the mail looking for that overdue bill or that form that needed signed. But the number one thing I must watch out for, which is fitting for today's theme, is trying not to be too much of a chip off the old block. See, growing up, my dad was pretty hot-tempered. And at the same time, I have to say, I've never seen a man mellow out so much in their later years as my dad. And like him, I have also mellowed out this past decade, too. I give credit to both living with Doug and God doing a real number on me. Still, on a few occasions, I've known what it feels like for anger to boil up so quickly, I almost feel out of control, and then I blow my lid. Today, we once again find ourselves at the beginning of the Bible. This is our third journey, and it has begun. This will take us up to the day of Pentecost in June of next year. Each year, we begin with a story from the opening parts of the Bible. We call the first 11 chapters in Genesis primeval history, or history of the earliest parts of human history, before written records. These stories were not meant to be about true events. They are theologically, not scientifically significant. They are stories created to help explain why we are the way we are and how we relate to our Creator. Was there an Adam and Eve and a garden in Eden? Maybe. Maybe not. And you know what? It really does not matter. Just remember that none of our ancient Christian creeds require us to believe that any of these early stories of the Bible were historically accurate. They can teach real truth without necessarily being historical. So immediately after being removed from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain grew up to be a farmer. Abel grew up to be a shepherd. One day, the both of them decided to give God an offering. Cain gave God some ears of corn from his fields, and Abel took the best lamb from his flock and gave God the best parts of that lamb. God liked Abel's offering more than Cain's. God doesn't explain why this is, and there's a lot of questions here. Like, where did the brothers learn about the offerings in the first place? God hasn't taught how to do this yet. In fact, in the garden they only ate vegetables, not meat. So then why did Abel need to be a shepherd of the sheep? And where did he learn to kill an animal? Well, the offering is not the point of the story. Our best guess is that Cain gave God his leftover grain, while Abel gave God the best parts of his lamb. So what's the point? The point is Cain had a problem with jealousy. And even though Cain was the older brother, he was jealous of his younger brother. The offering just highlights that jealousy. And notice how petty that jealousy started out as. Like all cases of jealousy, small and trivial. It just felt like Abel always got a leg up in life. God always blessed him more. He always had it easy. He is smart without trying, naturally athletic, inherently good-looking. How many sibling rivalries and even broken relationships go back years and years to something so simple and mundane? You laughed at my haircut. You tripped me. You kissed my girlfriend. For my mom's bridal shower in the late 70s, her cousin Sue made her a black velvet cake as a joke. Something perhaps that my mom said or a look that she gave made my cousin think that my mom was really mad at her. Thinking she ruined her bridal shower, Sue didn't talk to my mom for the next 30 years. My mom didn't think too much about it, didn't think that there was anything wrong, and even forgot about it. Perhaps she just thought that Sue had something against her. Who knows? My mom, when they saw each other 30 years later at a family reunion, her cousin Sue finally opened her up about that event and apologized for the cake and admitted that she was afraid to look my mom in the eye because she had ruined her bridal shower. I remember my mom saying, and I was really young, "Really? I thought that cake was funny." So there's no jealousy or anger in this example, and neither is this between siblings. But it does demonstrate how something minor can so easily grow into something big, driving a wedge between cousins and brothers, especially when we walk away with assumptions. God recognized that Cain was envious of his brother. Who knows? Maybe the offering was just to prove that exact point. God explains that with his jealousy building up inside of him, Cain was in a dangerous situation. Sin is crouching at your door, son. It's ready to strike. Control that sin before it controls you. But Cain doesn't listen. He takes his brother out to a field and murders him. We are 4 chapters into the Bible, page 5 in our Pew Bibles. There are only 4 people in the whole world, 2 parents and 2 sons, and there's already been a homicide. The story of Cain and Abel is simply a continuation and a deepening of the fall that began with Adam and Eve. To see how quickly things escalate, how quickly we can screw things up big time. Adam and Eve simply ate forbidden fruit, but their son took that sin to a totally different level. This is why all of these stories together is called the fall of humankind. It's the story of sin, leading to sin, leading to sin. It's how we got where we are today. That's the point of the story, even if it is poetic or imaginary. So it's before long, it's not individual acts of sin that matter the most, but it's humans living in a state of sin and a whole world affected by years and centuries and millennia of sin, building up like an unstable stack of hymnals, rewiring our brains and habits each day. Each day is a further day away from Eden. Cain couldn't, or at least wouldn't, control his jealousy. He let it escalate, harden into hatred, and it was enough to kill his own flesh and blood. "Where is your brother Cain?" God asked. "How should I know? I don't go around holding his hand everywhere. I'm not my brother's keeper." But God already knew the truth. "I can hear the voice of your brother's blood crying out to me from the ground." Like his parents, Cain must accept the consequences of his actions. Hatred and anger always break relationships and friendships, tear relationships apart. And that's what God was just about to prove to Cain. As punishment, Cain must leave his family and go wander the earth. And the ground will not always be kind to him. You will be a fugitive upon the earth. How do you think God felt in this moment? This is literally the first natural-born human on earth, human number 3, and God had to punish him for murder. Cain never repents or says he's sorry about his brother, but this is Cain's only concern. "This is more than I could bear. When I become a fugitive and wander the earth, I may be killed by someone else." Okay. So it doesn't take a genius to notice a problem here. If Adam and Eve and Cain are the only humans on earth, why is Cain afraid of someone else killing him? Well, here you see how some of these early stories were pieced together years later, sometimes haphazardly. Somehow by Genesis chapter 4, we are already recognizing that there are other cultures around. There's other people. Adam and Eve only had 3 sons. Cain, Abel, and Seth was born later. Being the first humans and having 3 sons isn't a good start to being fruitful and multiplying. Somehow, though, by verse 17, Cain has a wife and has his own son. How these stories came to us as they are was a messy process, leaving us plot holes and many unanswerable questions. Yet all of that misses the point. The point is, Cain was afraid that he would meet he was afraid that he would meet the same sticky end as his brother. And how true is that? Sometimes we are willing to inflict pain and suffering on others while being deathly afraid of the same thing happening to us. There's a saying out there that goes, "Do unto others as you would wish them to do unto you." Cain knows the truth. A vagrant murderer walking the earth is living with a target on their back. People hate murderers. People want murderers dead. He knew that. God knew that. And this is why God said to him, "This will not happen to you. Whoever tries to kill you will suffer a 7-fold vengeance. I'm going to put a mark on you so that no one who finds you will kill you." What that mark is, nobody really knows. And again, that is not the point of the story. It's that anger leads to anger. Hatred grows hatred. Violence begets violence. Why didn't God just kill Cain? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It seems fair. Problem solved. But no. God must show a better way forward. God protects this murderer. In fact, many Christians turn to this story in support against capital punishment. I mean, how does killing humans for killing humans make any sense. God already saw the downward cycle beginning, and it's only the second generation since the beginning of creation. God had to intervene, had to interrupt the cycle of violence. God protected Cain so that another human wouldn't be tempted to also kill Cain and start this chain reaction that would never end. There is enough research out there to prove that growing up in violent homes causes problems for the next generation. Kids who grow up in violent environments, be it a broken home or a rough neighborhood, are more likely to have health problems, use poor judgments, have social and emotional issues. They have higher likelihoods of dropping out of school, abusing alcohol and drugs, getting pregnant as teenagers, using deadly weapons, and becoming juvenile criminals. Children who suffer from abuse in the home are more likely to grow up with poor self-esteem, staying in dead-end jobs, or not being able to keep a job. Children who have been abused can also be full of anger, can have trouble trusting in other adults, and be more likely to become bullies and to perpetuate violent acts. See, these are traumatic experiences that can have major consequences and repercussions on generations later. A family history of misusing alcohol may cause an increase in the risk of a genetic predisposition to developing alcohol use disorder in future generations. When the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, it could be because bad habits can be ingrained in us from an early age, or a lack of exposure to good behavior, or it could even be caused by genetics and heredity. It is a cycle that is so hard to stop. We think we can handle violence because we see it on TV, but nothing prepares us for seeing it in real life. Gay and Mabel Johnson of our congregation has family members, including young children, who saw the SUV kill 6 people and injure 62 others during the Waukesha Christmas parade in 2021. They all had trouble sleeping for weeks after that. Humans were not meant to see that. It's against our nature. It breaks us. It's entertaining when it's on TV and in movies, but not in real life. Violence scars us for life. Almost all of our military personnel who have fought on the front lines have come back to us broken in some way. It's a downward spiral. Hurt people. God knew this and needed to intervene in order to stop that cycle before we destroyed ourselves completely. In 2017, a noisy rally made news around the world. So-called white supremacists and Proud Boys gathered in Charlottesville, Virginia. For many, this was the largest gathering of hatred we had seen in our lifetime. Among them was a man named Ken Parker, a high-ranking official in the KKK, spewing hatred about people of color, Jews, and gay people. At the end of the rally, worn out from heat exhaustion and dehydration, he had doubled over in pain when he met a woman named Dia Khan. Dia is a Norwegian-British documentary filmmaker of Punjabi descent, and she was there to chronicle the event. She saw Ken's physical pain and approached him, asking if he was okay, and if there was anything she could do to ease his discomfort. This little act alone planted a tiny seed of doubt in Ken's mind. Later in an interview with NBC, Ken said this: "She was a really nice lady, and she was completely respectful to me. Just because she's got darker skin and believes in a different God than the God I believe in, why am I hating these people? Where's the logic in that?" 6 months later, after this event, with that tiny little seed germinating ever so slowly and steadily, Ken Parker noticed some African American neighbors having a cookout in his apartment complex in Jacksonville, Florida. He approached them and began having a conversation. They were pleasant with each other. They asked questions and they listened, really listened. He didn't know it at the time, but the black man was a pastor, Reverend William McKinnon III. That night would be the first of many conversations they would share with each other. A month later, it was Easter Sunday, and Reverend McKinnon invited Ken and his girlfriend to church. And this was a historically black congregation, and they showed them great hospitality. A change was happening in Ken's life. A month later, Ken stood up to give his testimony, and this is how he described that testimony in an interview. "I was a grand dragon of the KKK. But even that was not hateful enough for me. So I decided to become a Nazi." And the people's jaws in the congregation dropped to the floor. But after the service, not a single one of them had anything negative to say to me. They all came up and hugged me and shook my hand, and they were trying to build me up instead of tearing me down. See, he felt the power of love through this community of color, committed to the love of God. People who knew what it meant to be angry at injustice, but also who knew the art of interrupting the cycle of violence and hatred. Ken Parker looked at his own white skin and saw the visible signs of his hatred. Nazi tattoos and the word white pride. He has since gotten them surgically removed. I want to say that I'm sorry. I do apologize. I spread so much hate. I made little kids scared to sleep in their own beds. But to all the white supremacists out there, I say this to you. You can definitely get out of this movement. I was in it so much. It was my life for 6 years. I never thought I would ever want to get out. But I was throwing my life away, and so are you. In my last appointment when I was in Illinois, I had mentioned the name Colin Kaepernick in one of my sermons. Someone came up to me after the service and, in so many words, told me not to use his name ever again because Colin really upset her. Ken Parker's turn from the KKK and neo-Nazism is a far cry from a church member getting upset at Kaepernick's refusal to stand for the national anthem. But it always starts somewhere. These little irritants feel so innocent, we often overlook it. My church member, needed to come to terms with her misplaced frustration over someone she had never met personally. She let the media and others condition her to the point that she was asking her pastor to censor a person's name just because it made her uncomfortable. It is at these early points in the building up of anger that God says, "Deal with it now, Cain, because sin is crouching at the door, ready to pounce. Don't let the sun go down on your anger." Our journey through the Bible starts with a series titled "The Beloved Community in Polarizing Times." Polarization always begins with distrust, fear, and anger for the other side, for the other brother. There's an insert in your bulletin today, maybe you can find it online, outlining, or just Google it, 7 ways to reduce political polarization. You can find it on Google. Like God had to do with Cain to save humanity from itself, we have to save America from itself too. And it starts by really examining everything from the small, petty things that really irritate us, all the way to the hatred that we can harbor that blinds us from seeing the goodness and holiness in the eyes of our assumed opponents. Hear the good news of Jesus Christ, friends. Through him, God interrupts our cycles of violence and hatred and has called us to be part of that work. Without God, we wouldn't have made it past page 5 of the Bible. But we are still here, multiplying and being fruitful. We are not always a chip off the old block, turning into our parents, stuck in cycles of dysfunction and destruction. We can see wrong in generations past, and for the most part, have a will to experiment with something new, better perhaps, to improve our situation. We can choose not to polarize ourselves or even kill our kinfolk. And this is all possible by the grace and love of God alone and God's incredible love for us. As Desmond Tutu once said, goodness is greater than evil. Love is stronger than hate. Light is stronger than darkness, and life is stronger than death. Thanks be to God, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.